Hello tanks and tankettes, and welcome to a view replay courtesy of We'll Fight for Pizza, whom we've definitely featured on the channel before, because a name like that you're not going to forget. This is the K-91, the latest and one of many tier 10 Soviet medium tanks to be added to the game. Here sporting the World Cup camo, or one of the World Cup camos that you can currently put on your tanks. And personally, I think it looks rather nice, but I quite like the colour orange, so I realise not everybody will think it looks particularly good. So this machine is a little bit interesting. It's one of the rear-mounted designs, and it's kind of squashy actually. You know, you think Soviet tier 10 medium tank and you think of tanks with some armour, but this really only has any armour on the front of the turret. And even then, it's incredibly inconsistent, because in some places it's like 600mm plus of effective armour, where pretty much nothing's going to pen, but in other places it's around 200mm or even less, and the actual turret roof itself is a 40mm plate. So basically any 122mm guns or above will be able to overmatch that, and there are certainly plenty of those around at this tier. As for the hull, you don't want to get shot anywhere. I think there are other reasonably fragile tier 10s. I think is it the Object 430U? 430B? I can't remember. There's so many. I think it might be the 430B. But that's also got a really fragile hull, but also much more extreme angling on it, so it can still produce bounces. That's not the case with this though. You can't even really side scrape, and it doesn't have a V-shaped hull, so you don't want to get hit essentially. What it does have is a really good DPM with this 100mm gun. The handling seems to be pretty reasonable, and it's going to be even more reasonable here with the use of the premium food. But it's just the ability to put out, I mean, the base DPM is nearly 3100, and of course you get the gun rammer, the food, a good crew on top of that. It's going to climb a couple of hundred even higher than that. So if you get into a position where you can whip those shots out, then you'll be able to rack up some decent amounts of damage. But it does seem like you have to be wary of getting into a situation where you're going to get shot at all. And so Fight for Pizza, well, initially he went to what was kind of a sniping position, and he's now moved around here now that it's a bit more free for him to do so, but he's still going to have to be careful. One thing I'll note, by the way, is that despite this being a rear-mounted turret design, which does add some awkwardness, it is still a tank with 9 degrees of gun depression, so it's rather better than you would think just looking at it, although I don't know if it's 9 degrees all the way around. In fact, I think it might be, just glancing at the Tanks GG page, I think this might be a design where you can't even get 360 degrees of rotation on the turret. I think you are actually limited in terms of how far around you can get it. So it's somewhat like the Death Star in that regard. Actually, that doesn't have a fully rotatable turret. So again, that's a little extra complication. However, the slope here is enough to provide cover for him, because it's a reasonably flat tank, to fire up at the flank, and you can see just the rate of fire here is going to be quite effective at starting to rack up some damage. And it's not a hard hitting gun, especially because it's only 100mm, but it does have I think it's like 276 average penetration with its APCR. It doesn't struggle in that regard, it absolutely does not. So this makes me think it's maybe something more akin to the Leopards in terms of playstyle, or I'm trying to think what else is kind of squashy. I mean, the Leopard really is by far the squashier machine than this. But this isn't a machine where you're ever going to want to sit out in the open if you can help it. So they look like they've got fairly good map control so far. He's going to take a little bit of a risk to shoot the Pershing, and hopefully he won't take any hits himself in the process, but he's already over 3k damage. And if he can get that guy, there we go, that's his first kill. Although, that goes to show you the hull's not that good if you can get penned by a 12T, which is, you know, it's obviously the tier 8 12T these days rather than the tier 6 12T, but still, it's not the most super high pen gun ever. I think he's got literally 100mm more average pen than that. So there's that 430U down there who is firing heat and managed to hit one of the places where even that wouldn't pen. But he doesn't want to take too much of a risk there. That 430U, by the way, does seem like they're just one of these players that does go around with full premium. But for most of this tank, you know, it's either not going to pen or it's just going to be complete overkill. So rather than play around there more, where he'd have to drop down to get the FV, he decides to go and help out against this 268, who's just pushed in way too far. Completely unsupported. 263 rather. I can tell the difference. And so, although it looks a bit dicey for this charioteer, with the reload he is able to finish off the 263 and save his teammate, and also rack up even more damage in the process. I have no idea why that 263 went that aggressively in there. They weren't even in a good position where they could cover any of their flanks, especially. So now he's just pressing forwards. They are, it looks like, winning, and he just wants to get some damage done. Takes out that FV with a rather casual flicking the turret around, and there's that 12T from earlier as well. And this time around he's able to get his front around at this guy and actually bounce the shots, at least one of which pinged into the turret, so he didn't have to really worry about taking any damage there at all. I don't know why the 12T didn't just back off. There's several inexplicable moves by enemy players in this one, but as the loading screen tip says, never interrupt your enemies when they're doing silly things. It's very impolite. So the 430U has relocated, and at this point he is the last enemy machine. So with a bit of encouragement to get this 252 to go forwards, Pizza is able to get in some last damage and might even get the last kill. And there we are, 5,317 damage done. I don't know why that 252 didn't manage to get anything out of that final tank there. Maybe not the best player in the world, but anyway, so from that position he was not only able to do all that damage, or well, quite a lot of that damage, but also nearly 3,000 spotting as well, earning him an extra medal and also a tank sniper as well. So he was able to just really accurately hit those shots over and over and over, and use his, you know, just use what he's got, peek out, only show his turret, and just be very, very effective in the process. So yeah, it looks like an interesting tank. And I don't know really how it compares to the other tier 10 Soviet mediums, because there's quite a roster at this point. I think of the tech tree ones, this is what, the 5th? Or is it even the 6th? I can't remember. But there's not even just those, there's like the 907 and the 907A as well, and the T22 medium. So yeah, there's quite a few of them at this point. But I don't know how this one slots in exactly, but it seems like it's a pretty reasonable machine, and it doesn't seem like it's super overpowered in any way, because with all the tanks these days you never quite know. So that was Will Fight for Pizza, and hopefully you have enjoyed this game. If you have, you can do the usual things down below, and of course, as always, stay tuned for more.